To the northwest, just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, sits a small, unincorporated community called Hubertus. By far the most notable destination in the area is the spot known as Holy Hill in nearby Erin. The landmark takes its name from a twin-spired Roman Catholic shrine that sits atop the hill, erected in 1931. While its history is a minor Christian pilgrimage site, there are indications that Holy Hill was revered by Wisconsin's indigenous population long before settlers ever set foot upon it. Today, the Holy Hill of Basilica and National Shrine of Mary help Christians receive around 300,000 visitors annually. But among all the pious visitors, one permanent resident lurks in the shadows, ready to pounce. You see, the area around Holy Hill and Hubert is famous for the Goatman of Hog's Back Road, a terrifying mixture of human and that began terrorizing settlers as early as the mid-19th century. Now, legend has it that he began life as a mortal man who died on Hog's Back Road, where he is condemned to forever wander, sporting the torso, head, and arms of a man alongside the horns and bottom half of a goat. He may be connected to the long-standing rumors of occult activity along the road. Legend has it that anybody traveling Hog's Back Road not only risks running into the Goatman himself, but also might pick up on malevolent forces along the way, only to unfold once they reach home. Now, according to legend, the Goatman's first victims were a newlywed couple who in the 1870s refused to heed their neighbors' warnings and decided to travel Hog's Back Road at night. Sounds like a wonderful time. At the time, the thoroughfare was nothing more than a dirt road, and so it comes as little surprise that their wagon hit a hole, broke down, and refused to budge. The husband decided to do what he thought was the courageous thing and left his new bride behind in the covered wagon while he sought help. The woman agreed to stay behind, waiting for her husband to return. Now, he never did. On and on the hours crept, and the bride began hearing strange noises in the forest on either side of Hog's Back Road, and soon darkness fell and the sounds grew even more intense. Gathering her courage, the bride peeped through a hole in the wagon's cover, only to see a beast covered head to toe in red hair, topped by a horned goat's head. The woman was terrified, and she knew that her safest bet was to remain in the wagon as quietly as she could for as long as she possibly could. Now, eventually, the sweet refuge of dawn brought with it renewed hope, and the bride, sure that the threat had passed, took a chance and looked out the wagon once again. There, in the fork of a tree, sat the mutilated remains of her husband. Ever since, the Goatman has remained a fixture in Hubertus, a rumor sought out by brave teenagers who venture onto Hog's Back Road alone. A six-pack, their only companion. Now, what at first sounds like another run-of-the-mill urban legend reveals the possible ring of truth when examined more closely. Hubertus has seen its share of monster sightings in more recent times, although it is difficult to say what haunts Hog's Back Road, other than the fact that it is a large and hairy creature. In 2003, a pair of men saw something resembling a goat-human hybrid cross the road in front of their car. They claim it was man-sized, its arms tiny, but its legs muscular. I mean, come on, Goatman never skips leg day. Be like Goatman. Now, 3 years go by, and Stephen Kruger, a contractor for the Department of Natural Resources, shared with late researcher Linda Godfrey, RIP, his own encounter with something terrifying near Holy Hill. In October 2006, Stephen was traveling the roads near Hubertus, collecting roadkill before dawn, checking each carcass off a list of reports. Now, eventually, Stephen happened upon a dead doe across from Holy Hill, found nowhere else on his list. He hoists the deer up into the bed of his truck and returns to the cab to fill out the required paperwork. Who knew that so much red tape was involved in roadkill collection? Now, as he sat in the dark, Stephen felt something pressing on the bed from behind, almost as if someone had hopped into the truck. He glanced in his side view mirror, and what he saw left his blood running cold. A large hairy beast, more wolf-like than anything, reaching towards the deer carcass. Holy crap, it was his ex-wife. No, I'm just messing. But despite being a seasoned outdoorsman, Stephen had no idea what he was looking at. Without a second thought, he slams on the gas, the rapid acceleration through both the deer carcass and the aluminum ATV rack upon which it sat into the road. When he finally returned in the light of day, Stephen found no sign of the doe's body or the ramp. Though Stephen's description sounds much more like Dogman than Goatman, we are left wondering what exactly prowls Hogsback Road in the area around Holy Hill. Now, whatever it is, it may be much more common around the world than we expect. Now, today's Goatman likely has its roots in much older mythologies. Combinations of goats and humans were a staple of European folklore, which often spoke of hairy-bodied creatures roaming the woods. To the Greeks and Romans, these were the half-human, half-goat satyrs and fauns, spirits of the landscape who served their chief god. Now, Pan, some Germans called similar creatures the Bachmann, which were known for carrying off helpless victims who wandered into the woods. Now, over time, the pagan associations held by these entities led their demonization by the early Christian church. The image of a man with horns and a goat's hindquarters, complete with cloven hooves, became readily grafted into depictions of Satan, imagery with us to this very day. Beyond these devilish connections, goats fulfill a number of roles in occultism. Depending on the tradition, they might be used as ritual sacrifices, though the incidence of this is probably overstated today. In Wales, goats were believed to be on very good terms with fairies, which sometimes took on the form of goats to disguise themselves. Other goats possessed occult intellectual powers and held forbidden and dark secrets. In other words, they knew all about the bad magic. The goat occult relationship solidified in Western thought after French esotericist Eliphas Levi drew a picture of the Sabbatic goat in 1856. This image, featuring a winged goatman sitting cross-legged, right arm pointing up, the left arm down, became incredibly popular. And soon, it was used everywhere as a sort of visual shorthand for the devil. It was even retroactively applied to Baphomet, the deity supposedly worshipped by the Knights Templar shortly before their persecution in the early 14th century. Today, the image of the goat and Goatman have been appropriated by the Satanic Temple, a non-theistic religious organization that claims to support such lofty goals as egalitarianism, social justice, and the separation of church and state. In reality, they're probably just a bunch of cosplayers trying to be edgy, but instead manipulated into being puppets for a psyop. But that's a story for another day, Lurklings. But with so much heavy symbolism behind goats, it's no wonder that goatmen are seen throughout the world in the modern era. And with so much negativity surrounding the image of half-human, half-goat forms, it's no wonder these things frighten people out of their wits. Now, if we go back to the legends of satyrs and fauns, goatmen have terrorized Europe for thousands of years. It's easy to dismiss these as ancient superstitions with really no backing, but modern encounters are less easily ignored. For example, a goatman, or given the setting, perhaps it was truly a satyr, was seen by several witnesses in Greece near Aklaidokampos one night in 1937. It screamed and shouted as witnesses before simply vanished into thin air. Now, a similar creature was reported in a dark lane in Athens in the 1950s, where it was seen gleefully dancing and hopping before disappearing. Far to the west in Spain, a man searching an abandoned house for discarded nails and wood described a terrifying encounter in April of 1986. He had just entered a vacant home near Benawasil when he became keenly aware that he was not alone. Something was shuffling around in the debris above him. Now, cautiously, he mounted the staircase, expecting to see another intruder or maybe an animal. Instead, the witness was greeted with nothing. He stood in the empty second floor for a few seconds, and an eerie silence descending over him. Having experienced enough, the man turned to leave, but was instead confronted by something enveloped in a long white cloak. From underneath this garment poked a pair of goat's hooves. The top end was less reassuring. From out of the cloak peeked a head with red glowing eyes. Immediately, the witness fled downstairs and out of the building, eager to surrender whatever salvage it may have contained. At least 2 Goatman sightings have happened over the centuries in Poland. The oldest, dated to 1638, occurred in the town of Lublin. A night secretary working late into the evening at a town hall saw a parade of humanoids wandering the streets. Each had horns and was covered in black hair. Welcome to Lublin, by the way, folks, in Poland, home of the 1638 Furry Convention. And centuries later, another witness found himself traveling a dark road. Why do people keep traveling these dark roads? With his parents in Dąbrowa Górnicza in winter of 2004. The road, which was rumored to be haunted, lived up to its reputation that very night. Now, some distance in front of their car, a pair of glowing eyes manifested. Now, as they approached, it became apparent that they belonged to a beast. No, you don't say. It resembled a goat standing on 2 legs with human arms, that is. Incongruously, the monster sported not goat horns, but deer antlers, and its face bore hints of a dog's muzzle. The being gestured to the family as they drove by before disappearing, at which point they noped right out of there as quickly as they could. Now, England has actually produced a surprising number of Goatman sightings over the years. In winter of 1937, a man in South Yorkshire was walking his dog around 8 at night when he noticed a strange figure standing in the roadway about 5 feet tall. To his horror, it closely resembled a human but had the hooves of a goat, both on its feet and its hands. And once it realized it had been spotted, the monster turned around, sprinting up a hill in the direction of some abandoned railroad tracks, and vanished completely from sight. Again, Goatman ain't skipping leg day, so he was prepared for the climb. And in 1948, Cyril Berry stepped outside to smoke a cigarette when he noticed a light in the window of his neighbor's home in Somerset. For whatever reason, this made Cyril curious. He walked over for a better look and immediately wished that he had not. Instead of some salacious scene or a picture of domestic bliss, his eyes were assaulted by a white-furred furry party? No, I'm just kidding. Goatman sitting at a large table, complete with 10-inch long horns and a billy goat beard. That's what you get for being a peeping Tom. Now, Cyril hightailed it out of there, but the following day, curiosity got the best of him. He checked again, and to his amazement, the same room that had appeared orderly now sat dusty and vacant, as if it had been abandoned for years. A married couple parked their car near Longleat Forest, west of Warminster, got more than they bargained for on August 14, 1972. Around 2:30 in the morning, 2 small red lights bobbed out of the woods, then jetted into the sky. One of them headed towards Clay Hill, the other in the direction of Warminster. More curious than frightened, the couple immediately exited the car, heading in the direction of where the lights had first appeared. Now, both felt it right away, because as they drew closer, a negative sensation, strong and heavy, began creeping over them. They pushed on further, stopping to listen. While at first, they heard nothing, and soon enough, both of them noticed a strange noise, as if someone were trying to say, "Shoo, shoo." This was enough for the wife, who then returned to the safety of the car right away. Now, a few moments later, her husband joined her, running for his very life. After he hopped inside and locked the doors, he told his wife that he had seen something horrendous after she left, an immense goat-like creature. The oddest part, it had scales covering its belly like a fish and was completely covered in a fluorescent green color. While it may seem like just another tall tale, the area is infamous for hosting strange encounters. In fact, Earlier that same evening, another group of witnesses had an encounter with a group of strange humanoids just over half a mile away. More recently, in February of 2022, a goat-human hybrid was spotted near the village of Staverton in Northamptonshire. The encounter appeared from an anonymous witness who seemed genuinely concerned and unable to explain what they saw. The witness wrote this: "Towards the end of our journey, this was about 2 a.m. We were driving along the A425 in a rural area when something crossed the road in front of us in full headlights for about 3 seconds. It was about the height of a person, maybe 6 feet or over, but had short, powerful legs and hips, which seemed to move in a circular, fluid fashion. It was not a deer because it stood on 2 legs. Now, this was in the Midlands, and the area is traditional rolling fields and woodland. In this particular spot, there are no houses or buildings. Nearest is over a mile away. We drove back today, as it is only 7 miles from home, to look at the road layout. Whatever it was moved into a wide, bowl-shaped field, dropping down to a stream. Any ideas?" See? Short, powerful legs. See, I told you, Goatman and leg day. Anyway, the account caused a minor stir amongst paranormal researchers who scrambled to suggest possible answers. Was it a kangaroo that escaped from a private collection, perhaps? The witness didn't seem to think that this was likely, eventually admitting that the closest we can describe this is a large man-goat on hind legs, but really stocky ones. Turning our eyes to the United States of America, we find a land where Goatman legends and sightings truly flourish. Goatman can be found all throughout the country. Red Ash Cemetery in Caryville, Tennessee is supposedly home to the pentagram goatman, a creature said to stand 8 feet tall, a pentagram branded on its forehead. A brief rash of sightings in Pennsylvania in the 70s saw a horrific goat-like creature harassing Amish citizens in Lancaster County. But it is in Maryland where the East Coast's most robust goatman legend arose. Although mostly regarded as an urban legend, some people in Prince George's County still believe that the canine disappearances can be attributed to a half-human, half-goat creature that haunts Fletchertown Road in Bowie. In fact, some people claim that they have actually seen the Goatman tossing headless canine corpses from overpasses above Interstate 495. Skeptics say that the kills are simply railroad accidents. Like some other Goatmen, the Goatman of Prince George's County has a sufficiently creepy origin story attached to it. One rumor has it that the Henry A. Wallace Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, a former tobacco plantation northeast of Washington, D.C., was turned into a government research lab for genetic experimentation sometime in the 1970s. Now, supposedly, a mad scientist using goats in his laboratory was bitten by one of his research subjects, turning the man into, essentially, a weregoat. I'm laughing because the thought is ridiculous. Now, his head sprouted horns, his skin brown fur, his rear end became a tail, while his feet became hooves. Shunned by society, the scientist fled into the woods where he can still be spotted by unlucky people today. However, the Goatman, or something close to it, was reported well before the 1970s. On August 1st, 1957, a Mr. and Mrs. Garner pulled into their driveway in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, only to encounter a hairy wild man that some believe was actually the Goatman. The beast was spotted again on November 3rd in 1971 in a Fletchertown Road backyard, and shortly thereafter, the witness's dog disappeared, only to partially return the following day as only a head. Now, 2 weeks go by, and Kathy Edwards and a group of her girlfriends saw some sort of humanoid climb off of a truck and disappear into the woods in the same general area. Like the Goatman of Hogsback Road, the Goatman of Prince George's County became infamous among thrill-seeking youth. One 17-year-old witness said in 1971, "I've heard he's intensely mad at young people. I don't know why." Some say that if you are unlucky enough to encounter the Goatman of Prince George's County today, you might find him chasing your car, axe in hand. West Virginia also has a long history of Goatman sightings. Here, they sometimes call it sheepsquatch, a blend of Bigfoot and a goat, or simply the white thing. Remember, when making a difficult choice, be like sheepsquatch, do the white thing. Whatever you want to call it, the creature often appears white, has a long caprine head, and a single set of horns ranging from curling horns or a full-grown ram to the stubby points of a young goat. Now, sheepsquatch seem to prefer the southwestern reaches of the state. The 1990s saw a large number of sightings emerge from Boone County. Now, in 1994, the creature was seen by a former Navy seaman who claimed to have watched it break the brush line near a creek, then bend down for a drink. After it had its fill, the sheepsquatch simply meandered off in the direction of the nearest road. Now, that same year, a pair of children saw the same or similar beast, although they compared it to a gigantic white bear. The creature seemed just as frightened as the witnesses, however, and tore off through the forest, leaving behind broken trees. The following year, the creature appeared in Boone County yet again, this time with the terrifying addition that it seemed to have 4 eyes. The witnesses were a couple who spotted their car after noticing something strange and white in a nearby ditch. From the safety of their vehicle, they had ample time to make a detailed observation. Unlike other encounters, this one ended with a display of aggression as the creature leapt out of the ditch and headed angrily in the direction of the car. The couple sped away as it attacked, only stopping when they got home, where they found long claw marks on the left side of their vehicle. Now, in 1999, a group of campers were gathered around a Boone County bonfire when they heard something circling them, scuffing and snorting. They feared it was a bear, but it was something much, much worse. Without warning, a sheepsquatch burst into the light of fire, charging at the campers. Now, fight or flight kicked in, and choosing the latter, everybody ran back towards the safety of the nearby cabin. The creature only followed them as far as the forest edge, where it stopped and let loose an ear-splitting bellow. Then it simply turned around and disappeared back into the forest. The following morning, everybody checked the site of the encounter. They found that the soil was violently disturbed, like somebody had tilled it up for gardening. And finally, in 2015, another set of campers encountered the monster near Folks Run, West Virginia. 6 eyewitnesses overnighting in the forest claimed to have first seen the sheepsquatch crouching atop a nearby hill. When it stood up to its full height, an imposing 8 or 9 feet tall, the primary witness alerted the others, who watched as the beast began loping downhill. The campers felt relatively safe. There was a wide rushing river separating them from the beast with no obvious way to cross. Now soon, the sheepsquatch stood at its banks, apparently having come to a similar realization. It paced back and forth through the sand, furiously searching for a way to make it across the river to the campers. To their horror, the beast began wading into the current. Now, in some respects, it now resembled a large white bipedal dog with ram's horns, stomping through the water. Everybody waited until the last moment to abandon their camp, hoping that the river would sweep the sheepsquatch downstream. Unfortunately, it did not, and the beast stomped out onto the bank. Everyone was poised to flee when, from somewhere out in the wilderness, maybe 2 miles away, a loud, guttural screech echoed across the mountains. Do you know what it was? It was Mariah Carey. I'm serious. The sheepsquatch stopped dead in its tracks, tilting its head in the direction of the sound, affording everybody present a good look at its horrendous face in the glow of the moonlight. It appeared to be in complete shock as the distant cry faded away. The sheepsquatch whimpered, then left in the opposite direction of the noise as fast as its feet could carry it. All of the campers were now in a full panic. That thing was scary enough, and the idea that something could have frightened it was simply too much to bear. Everybody packed up as quickly as they could and vacated the premises. While no one alerted the authorities, They were supposedly afraid of the ridicule. The campers, nonetheless, informed the locals, who eventually shared their story. Now, admittedly, this story is just a little too perfect, especially the eerie ending and ambiguous attribution, so it may just be another tall tale. Even in such a narrowly defined category as Goatman, there are still a few cryptozoological celebrities. Sheepsquatch is one, the Pope-like monster is another. What sounds like a fun Saturday night at the Vatican is actually a cryptid. The Pope-like monster is always described as a hybrid of human and goat features, perhaps an escaped circus performer or a local farmer who sold his soul to the devil by sacrificing his goats. Either way, it has been blamed for unexplained livestock deaths, and in one instance even supposedly ran off a Boy Scout troop by screaming and throwing rocks. The creature allegedly stalks Kentucky's Pope-Lick Creek and Louisville's Fisherville neighborhood. Specifically, the Pope-Lick monster stands near the old train trestle, where it uses either mimicry or the power of hypnosis to lure its victims into the path of an oncoming locomotive. Others claim that it drops from the trestle onto cars below, or that it is so frightening that anyone who sees the beast and the bloody axe it wields jumps off the trestle rather than face their doom at the hands of the Pope-Lick monster. Sounds kind of like a minotaur to me. Many erroneously believe that the trestle is out of service. Nothing could be further from the truth. Anywhere from 15 to 25 locomotives cross it each day. Combined with urban legend, luring in thrill seekers becomes a recipe for disaster. Regardless of whether or not the Pope-Lick monster exists, dozens of people have met their end on the train trestle. These deaths continue today. The most recent happened back in 2019 on May 26th, when a 15-year-old Savannah Bright was pronounced dead at the scene. And afterwards, Fire Chief Sean Dreisbach issued a strongly worded statement. Stay off the tracks. These tracks are very dangerous. A train comes with little to no warning. You have nowhere to go once you are on a trestle other than to outrun the train. And when you see or hear that train, it's too late. What I want people to realize is it's a silly legend. It doesn't exist. The train is real. The train can kill you and will kill you if you stand in its way. Nonetheless, rumors of similar creatures do persist throughout the state. Kentucky native and friend of What Lurks Beneath, Barton Nunnally, has spoken to multiple Goatman witnesses. Hey guys, by the way, Barton Nunnally has an amazing YouTube channel. You guys should all go check it out. It is in the description down below. Now, in his book, Barton's Mysterious Kentucky, he actually wrote about an interview he had with R. Stapleton. Stapleton and his entire family, including his wife and parents, all claim to have seen the Goatman on their farm in Smith Mills, Henderson County in the late 1970s. Now, they described it as having the familiar traits. It had long, shaggy hair falling down to its shoulders with two short horns growing from its forehead. It had a hairy chest and arms with the hair thinning out around the abdomen and entirely covering the creature from its narrow waist to its split-hoofed feet. Its eyes, according to the Stapletons, were a glowing yellow color. Now, according to Stapleton's story, he and another man actually had the courage to approach the Goatman on one such occasion as it stood there watching them. They were able to get within just a few yards before the creature simply dematerialized. It is important to note that according to the Stapletons, their house was also haunted during the time they experienced their Goatman encounters. Could the two be connected in any way? Now, Barton also spoke with Doug Oliver, a witness from Paducah, who claimed one night to have seen something peculiar while driving Highway 69 outside of Dundee, Kentucky. Doug said, "I was heading home and I saw something leap across the road. I hit the ditch to keep from hitting it. It was so unreal, almost deformed. It had a monkey-like face, small horns, strange arms like a kangaroo, thick legs, and a long tail. It was far from human. I think it was the Goatman." Gosh, guys, I really need to get Goatman's leg day routine. Now, if a ground zero for North American Goatman sightings exist, it has to be Texas, right? Because everything's bigger in Texas, including the amount of encounters people have with supposed beings that exist. While Goatman legends can be found in every U.S. state, Texas boasts not only one, not two, but multiple Goatman legends and even contemporary sightings. In the 1970s and 80s, word spread around Dallas that a hideous Goatman could be seen patrolling the forest around White Rock Lake. The beast has been spotted on and off over the years. Perhaps one of the most recent sightings come from August of 2001, when a jogger named Grace stumbled upon the beast herself. Now, it was around 2 in the afternoon, and Grace was completing the 9-mile-long trail around the lake when she herself spotted the White Rock Lake Goatman. A coat of thin, coarse brown hair covered its body, and its head a pair of large horns growing from the top. It immediately walked in Grace's direction, leaving her paralyzed with fear. Finally, when it reached 15 feet of her, it dropped to all fours and simply disappeared in a bright flash of light. Grace was certain that what she had saw was no hallucination. A witness from Normandy, Texas, claimed to have spotted another Goatman in January of '92. She was fast asleep when her dogs began barking outside. Calling her attention to the nearby window, still only half awake, she stumbled to the window and looked outside. And there, in the dim illumination provided by an outdoor light, she saw a 7-foot-tall creature trying to defend itself from her pets. It stood upright like a man, but its shoulders were more curved. The head was quite similar to a man's, with the exception of a pair of horns it wore on the top. Its legs and arms appeared to be human as well, although the hands were tipped with long, wicked-looking gray fingernails. Now, the Goatman's body displayed sparse bits of hair all over its sickly, yellowish-green flesh. Her dogs were ripping at the creature's heels, or more accurately, its hooves. Now, the Goatman stood beneath a nearby pecan tree, too preoccupied with her pets to pay any attention to the witness. Instead, it realized that it was no match for the dogs and simply trotted into the night. Later, the witness claimed that from time to time, she would catch the sound of goats bleating on the wind, even though none of her neighbors kept any livestock. Bah. About 160 miles north of Normandy sits Denton, Texas. Now, this town has its own version of the Pope-Lick monster. Like its Kentucky cousin, that Denton Goatman haunts a bridge, the Old Alton Bridge to be exact. Like some legends of the Goatman of Hog's Back Road, some say that the Denton Goatman was conjured by a cultist who opened a portal to hell. Another legend claims that a local man killed his entire family and was condemned to death by hanging from the bridge. When his body was dropped, his head popped off, leaving behind a decapitated ghost who haunted Old Alton Bridge for a while afterward. Eventually, the ghost grew powerful enough, found a goat, wrenched its head off, and plopped it atop its shoulders. It makes perfect sense that both the Denton Goatman and the Pope-Lick monster would haunt bridges. Bridges, after all, are transitory spaces, otherwise known as liminal zones. And the paranormal, for whatever reason, seems to thrive on liminality. Those places that sit between one thing and another. I mean, think about it. Haunting activity picks up during home renovations, Bigfoot is neither human nor ape, trolls live under bridges, devils appear at crossroads, sleep paralysis happens between sleep and wakefulness, UFOs hover between heaven and earth, and my beard keeps growing. These are all examples of the either or, neither nor concept of liminality. Authenticated sightings of the Denton Goatman are hard to find. Nonetheless, plenty of locals still claim to know someone who knows someone who knows somebody who knows somebody who saw the creature lurking about the bridge. By far, the best known and best documented Texas Goatman sightings occurred in the summer of 1969. 3 couples, including John Reichert and his wife, swore to the Fort Worth police that they had seen something unnatural in the vicinity of Lake Worth's Greer Island around midnight between July 9th and the 10th. The witnesses placed its weight somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 pounds. It had stormed out of the forest like a raging locomotive, slamming the hood of John's car and attempting to snatch his wife out of her seat. As evidence, they presented an 18-inch long gouge on the side of the car left by the creature. Like some other goatmen we've discussed, the Lake Worth monster seemed to wear a covering of both hair and scales. It was also clearly described as being half human, half goat, although this has not stopped generations of cryptozoologists from trying to recategorize it as a Bigfoot. No, the Lake Worth monster was clearly a goatman in the fine Texas tradition. Now, 4 squad cars were immediately dispatched to the scene of the assault, and later, it came out that the law enforcement had been investigating reports of the Goatman for over 2 months prior to the July 9th/10th sighting. Some officers thought it was just a bunch of malarkey, while others couldn't shake the feeling that there was something to the stories. I mean, after all, many of the witnesses seemed genuinely frightened. Monster fever swept Fort Worth. A newspaper article written by none other than noted JFK conspiracy theorist Jim Marrs bore the hilarious title, "Fisherman Goat Terrifies Couples Parked at Lake Worth." People descended upon the city in hopes of spotting the creature, and many succeeded, although their accounts didn't always agree. Some said its hair was dark, while others were adamant it was white. It was said to issue something like a squall or howl, resembling a pitiful cry like something was hurting him. Rumors of missing dogs and cats spread through Fort Worth like wildfire. And at least one alleged photograph of the Lake Worth monster exists, shot by local dress shop owner Alan Plaster. Exactly what it shows has been debated for over 50 years now. Notably, no horns are visible. Other photographers found their cameras suddenly malfunctioning in the presence of the beast. Now, eventually, a posse of 36 people banded together, including 3 law enforcement officers, determined to find the creature once and for all. They seemed to succeed, chasing the Lake Worth monster up a bluff. However, this ended poorly. One of the witnesses, Jackie Harris, told reporters that the monster got hold of a spare tire with a rim in it and threw it at our cars, a distance he estimated as more than 500 feet. After that, he said that everybody jumped back into their cars and sped away as quickly as they could. Another notable encounter unfolded on November 7th when, at 2 a.m, a Charles Buchanan saw the creature while camping by the lake in the bed of his pickup truck. Without warning, he was jerked to the ground, only to see a large, shaggy humanoid towering above him. It smelled absolutely revolting, to the point it made him gag. And without a weapon handy, he grabbed the first thing his hands hit, a bag of leftover chicken. Charles shoved the parcel in the monster's face, causing it to flee. It's too bad he didn't have any Sbarro. He would have killed the monster instantly. Now, in the end, more than 70 people claimed to have seen the creature. Sightings did die down eventually, helped by a crackpot skeptical theory that the Lake Worth monster was a bobcat, either wild or an escaped pet. Now, exactly how anyone mistakes a bobcat for a goatman remains unclear and incredibly stupid. Now, especially if the story of a tire rim being thrown is true. The Lake Worth monster easily represents the largest goatman sighting ever recorded, if that is indeed what it was. It is hard to argue with so many eyewitnesses. I mean, we have to wonder, what could Goatman possibly be? It is easy enough to explain Bigfoot. If it is real, flesh and blood, at least something remotely resembling it appears in the fossil record. The idea that goatmen are living animals, cryptids in the literal sense, is much harder to swallow. Now, simply put, we don't have evidence of anything resembling a half-goat, half-human ever walking the earth, unless you inject the idea of the Nephilim. But that's for a whole other video. Now, this implies something absolutely terrifying, that the old legends describing satyrs and fauns were somehow rooted in truth and fact, that they were somehow true. If we accept the Christian interpretation of Goatman, we may be dealing with something far more sinister, evil itself, the great adversary. If that is indeed the case, Goatman should be avoided at all cost. But more importantly, I want to know what you guys all think. Is there any at all truth to the legend that surrounds the Goatman? And if Goatmen are a real thing, Do you believe that they could be part of the Nephilim? Be sure to go ahead and leave your comment on what you think down below. As always, I want to hear from you. And if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to go ahead and smack that like and subscribe button for more content very similar to this. As always, I love you all, keep it up in mind, and I'll check you guys out in the very next video.